Last Easter, my dad handed everything to Luca, the business I'd spent $80,000 to save. They laughed at my career. A year later, they begged me for help. My revenge just started. And now I'm here to tell you everything. And I need to know, was I wrong for walking away from the man who gave me life? Hey there, my name's Ethan. I'm 30 years old, living in New York City, and I run a chain of pet care stores. The business is steady, the money's good. I've got a home of my own, a decent car, and a cozy office that catches the evening sun, where I usually end up staying late, finishing work with a hot coffee. From the outside, it probably looks like I've got it made. People assume I must come from a warm, tight-knit family that's proud of what I've built. But the truth is, I don't have a family. Or if I do, it's the one I left behind exactly a year ago. I remember that day as if it just happened. I was standing there in the middle of the living room, surrounded by relatives, and I looked my parents straight in the face and said, I don't belong here anymore. That wasn't a choice I made lightly. But sometimes, when the silence and the disappointment pile up so high, it pushes you to a breaking point. At that moment, you either keep taking the hits, or you walk away and don't look back. So today, I'm not here to point fingers or make excuses. I'm telling this story as a reminder to myself, because sometimes, the only way to move forward is to let go of what you once thought you couldn't live without. It was a Sunday afternoon, the end of April, Easter Day. And that was the day I made the cleanest break of my life. I left the family behind and didn't flinch. The weather was clearing up, sunlight warming up the cold pavement after days of chilly spring rain. I'd left Manhattan early, driving past folks heading to church in their Easter best, feeling a quiet kind of hope that maybe this gathering would bring something good. I've always been the kind of person who shows up early, 15 minutes ahead is on time for me. That day was no exception. By the time I pulled up, the place was already alive with noise, laughter, talking, the clinking of glasses, kids running around. It felt more crowded than usual. Aunts, uncles, cousins, some I hadn't seen in years. A few faces I recognized, but couldn't place the names. Mom pulled me aside and told me this year was special. Said Dad had something important to share. I didn't ask. I just walked into the kitchen and set down the chocolate mousse cake I'd brought, her favorite. I'd picked it up from a quiet little bakery I found years ago. Along with that, I brought a bottle of wine, a box of fancy pastries, and a small bouquet of flowers I knew she liked. Those little gestures couldn't fix the cracks between us. I knew that. But maybe they were my way of trying to hold on to whatever warmth was left. About 20 minutes in, the party fell into a rhythm, plates being passed around, the smell of meat and potatoes filling every corner, folks talking about housing prices, the stock market, which schools their kids were headed to. I took a seat in the corner, kept quiet, ate my food, and listened. I didn't feel like jumping into small talk. I didn't feel like pretending to fit in. Then, about a half hour later, Dad stood up, raised his wine glass, used that deep, formal voice he saved for big moments. Can I get everyone's attention? He said, loud enough to hush the room. And then he dropped it. Starting today, all family assets, the business, shares, property, are being handed over to Luca. The room froze. I swear, even the air got heavier. My heartbeat slowed, like my whole body paused to process what he just said. And then came the applause. Loud, sudden, and strangely eager. Like they'd all been waiting for it. Mom chimed in right after, beaming like she'd just watched Luca win an award. He's been with the company for 5 years, she said proudly. He's going to take it to the next level. I sat there, still as stone, staring down at a half-full glass of water. The cold glass pressed into my fingers, but it couldn't touch the heat in my chest. The clapping didn't stop. It came in waves, like fists pounding on the back of my chair. And, from that day on, it was like I'd been quietly replaced. Luca became the golden child, and I was just background noise. Ever since I told Dad I wanted to be a vet, things started to shift, not with fights or screaming, but with silence, with distance that slowly crept in and never left. No one ever said it outright, but I could feel it, like I'd taken a wrong exit off the path they'd planned for me. So I learned to keep my mouth shut. I figured that was just the toll for choosing my own way. Still, even as the space between us grew wider, I never turned my back on them when they needed something. I kept sending Mom flowers every Mother's Day. When the AC broke in the middle of a summer heat wave, I pitched in without being asked. And when the company hit hard times, I showed up, no questions asked. I never kept score. Maybe that's why it cut so deep when they turned on me, because I never thought my own father would treat me like I didn't belong. But he did. I'll never forget that phone call, late at night, about a year before everything blew up. His voice sounded tired, a little shaky, like he'd been debating whether to dial my number at all. The company was on the edge. Some huge deal had fallen through at the last second. They needed $90,000 to stay afloat. I suggested we make things official, let the family know what was happening, or at least write something up acknowledging that I was stepping in to help. But he shut that down instantly. "This is a family matter," he said. "When your mom and I are gone, you'll still have your piece of the business." That's all he gave me. And I, like a fool, nodded and let it go. Next morning, I wired the full 80 grand. No paperwork, no conditions, just my father's voice echoing in my head. "You'll still have a share." That one word, family, hooked me in deeper than I'd care to admit. Looking back now, I should have known better. I should have asked for something in writing. But when it comes to some people, the idea of family only matters when they need saving. So when Easter came around again and Dad stood up to announce Luca was getting everything, I didn't stay silent this time. I spoke up. My voice was steady. "What about me?" I asked, cutting through the buzz of wine glasses mid-toast. The room went still. Heads turned. It was like people just realized I'd been there the whole time. I could hear whispers starting to ripple. "He's the older brother, isn't he?" Then my mother stepped in, her voice soft, like she was trying to smooth over something sharp. "Ethan, you already have a career, a home, a car. Luca has nothing." I looked her dead in the eye, and when I spoke, I made sure every word hit the floor like a dropped brick. "That career? I built it myself. I left home at 18 with nothing but a scholarship and a bag of clothes. I worked through school, saved every penny. I never took a cent from either of you. But you," I went on, "you paid for every bit of Luca's tuition, covered all his bills. And now, after all that, you hand everything to him like I was never part of this family." I wasn't done. Before anyone could step in, Luca opened his mouth, oozing smugness. "Mom's right. You shouldn't be competing with me." I turned to him so fast it felt like the air shifted. "Shut your mouth," I said, pointing right at him. "You don't get to talk." The whole room froze. Then my dad slammed his palm against the table, and his voice came out like a whip. "Enough, Ethan. Luca followed the path we set. You didn't. If you hadn't chosen to spend your life with animals, this company would have been yours." I sat there, stunned. Then the words came out, slow and clear. "You know what's crazy? Those filthy animals, they're the reason I had the money to save your company." I leaned forward. "If my career's such a joke, then pay me back. Right now." Dad shot up, face red, eyes burning. "I'm not giving you a damn cent. I raised you. I fed you. I paid for your education. And now you spend your life cleaning up after cats and dogs? You're a disgrace." And that was the end for me. I sat in silence for a few seconds. Then I stood up and said the one thing I'd been holding in for years. "If that's how you see me, then we're done. Don't call. Don't come looking." I turned toward the door, then paused, not to apologize, but to leave him with this. I never asked to be born. So don't throw your sacrifices at me like debt collectors. Don't use them to guilt me into being who you wanted. Then I walked out, head up, no regrets. I got home just before 9 that night. First thing I did was walk into the bathroom, crank the water up as hot as it would go, and stand under it until I felt like I could breathe again. I needed to wash it all off. The bitterness, the anger, the weight of sitting through that dinner pretending I still belonged. 20 minutes later, I stepped out. Lighter. Still raw, but lighter. I made a cup of strong coffee and sat by the window, staring out into the dark. My mind drifted back to when I first left home. 18 years old. One suitcase. A few sets of clothes. Just the money I'd scraped together working part-time. I barely made rent some months. Ate cheap meals. And never, not once, did my parents check in to see if I was okay. I remember that cramped studio I lived in for the first couple years after college. No space. No comfort. Just 4 walls and a pile of student loan bills. I had to pinch every penny just to stay afloat. Then one quiet Sunday afternoon, no plans, no shift, this random idea popped into my head. It almost felt like a joke. What if I made a video about taking care of pets? So I did. I grabbed whatever I could, some books, a couple of old shoeboxes, and stacked them into a makeshift tripod. Balanced my phone on top, and just started talking like I was chatting with an old friend. Once I finished, I hit upload. Threw it up on Facebook and YouTube without a second thought. It wasn't meant to be anything serious. Just a little experiment. If someone saw it, cool. If not, no big deal. But then something wild happened. Within 48 hours, that video blew up. I'm talking close to 3 million views. I kept refreshing the page like my phone was broken or glitching. And then came the comments. The messages. People asking for more. That's when it hit me. Maybe I should keep going. At first, I thought I was just sharing tips. Doing a good deed. But a month later, I got my first real check. $2,000 from ad revenue and a couple of small sponsorships. I remember staring at that number for the longest time, wondering if I was imagining it. I even refreshed the dashboard a few times to make sure it was real. But the numbers didn't lie. They just kept climbing. 9 months later, my YouTube channel passed the 1 million subscriber mark. And by the end of the first year, I had over 2 million people following me across every platform I posted on. That's when the pet care brands started sliding into my inbox. They wanted to team up, send me products, sponsor my content. That's when I knew I wasn't just playing around anymore. This thing had become real, bigger than I ever imagined. And with the backing of all those amazing folks who'd been watching from the beginning, I decided to open my first pet care store. I named it Whisker and Paw. But it wasn't just about grooming cats or helping dogs. It was about creating something warm, something kind. The kind of love I always wanted from my own family, but never fully got. The first store? It was a hit. Bigger than I ever dreamed it could be. Maybe it was because of the community who'd been with me since video 1. Maybe it was because I treated every single customer, 2-legged and 4-legged, with honesty and care. But either way, it worked. A few months in, I had to bring on more help. We extended our hours. Started planning for location number 2. Within a year, store number 2 opened its doors. Fast forward 4 years, and now Whisker and Paw has 7 locations spread across the boroughs, with over 30 folks working part-time and full-time. Some have been here since the beginning. Others just joined. But every one of them, they're family, the kind I built myself. And even with all that success, I never boasted about it. Especially not to my parents. Not to my relatives. I learned that lesson early from a mentor, guy in the industry who'd seen it all. He told me something I'll never forget. Never show off your wins. Not even to your parents. Back then, I didn't really get it. I thought, why not share the good stuff with your own family? Shouldn't they be the first to know you're doing okay? But as the years went by, I understood. Everyone's got a little envy in them. Some hide it better than others. But when you talk about your success, they don't always cheer for you. Sometimes, they just see an opportunity. A wallet. A safety net. Suddenly, people start asking for loans, pitching wild business ideas, or expecting favors just because you're family. And when you say no, that admiration turns sour real fast. So I kept quiet. I still showed up for the holidays. Still brought something nice. Desserts, little gifts, maybe a bottle of good wine or something thoughtful for Mom. But I never talked about the business. I never mentioned how many employees I had. Never shared new store openings or exciting plans on the horizon. To them, I was just Ethan, the guy who works with animals. And honestly, that was fine by me. After that Easter blow-up, I didn't call, didn't text, didn't visit. And you know what? Neither did they. My parents, Richard and Elaine Brooks, never once checked in. No messages, no missed calls, just silence. It felt like they'd expected me to disappear. And instead of feeling hurt by that, I felt free, like I could finally breathe again. I'd wake up in the morning and not have to wonder if a guilt-laced message from Mom was waiting for me. At night, I'd sit in my apartment, sipping coffee in peace, focused on my work, not weighed down by a sense of obligation. That feeling? It had a name. Freedom. But about 6 months ago, just as I was pouring my second cup of morning coffee, my phone buzzed. And when I looked down and saw Dad's name on the screen, I froze. Coffee cup still in my hand. Thumb hovering over the decline button. And for a second, just 1 second, I hesitated. A strange little voice in my head whispered, what if they've changed? What if this is the moment they finally say sorry? Maybe I was still holding on to some sliver of hope. Something tiny and foolish. So I answered. His voice came through right away. No greetings. No build-up. Ethan, the company's in real trouble. Luca signed a bad contract. We're looking at $130,000 in damages. We need your help. For the Brooks name. For the family's reputation. I didn't even blink. I just said, $80,000 was already more than enough, Dad. If you want help, start by paying that back. Silence. I could hear it in his breath. He was ticked off. Or maybe disappointed. But I didn't care anymore. Before he could say another word, I added, and if all you're trying to save is the family name, don't forget, that name never lifted a finger to protect me. Then I hung up. Let them figure out their $130,000 mess. I figured that was the end of it. But I underestimated them. Next morning, just after 7 a.m., my doorbell started ringing. Not politely. Not just once. It was constant. Aggressive. Like they were trying to break their way in. When I opened the door, I saw them, my parents, and Luca, standing right there. I didn't invite them in. I didn't even move from the doorway. I just stood there, blocking the entrance, making it crystal clear this wasn't their home anymore. I already knew why they were there. So I cut straight to it. If this is about the $130,000, save yourselves the trip. I'm not helping. My tone was calm, low, but every word landed with weight. My mom stepped back a little. Her eyes were red, not quite from crying, but you could tell something had cracked. Maybe it was guilt, or just exhaustion, or maybe she'd finally realized this time I meant it. Maybe it was anger with nowhere left to land. My mom was the next to speak, her voice tight and brittle, trying hard to sound calm. Ethan, she said, you've got an entire chain of pet care stores. $130,000 isn't that much for you. I'm begging you, if you don't help, the company's going to fall apart. We'll lose everything. Then Luca shuffled forward just a bit. He couldn't even look me in the eyes. His voice came out softer than I'd ever heard. Ethan, please. Just this once. I know I screwed up. I know I ruined it. I didn't say a word. I let them talk. I didn't interrupt. Didn't shake my head. I just stood there, fingers clenched around the doorframe, like letting go would somehow tear down all the walls I built to protect myself. And when it was quiet again, when the last word had been said, I finally answered. Slow. Calm. Clear. Leave. Now. Or I call the cops. My dad's expression hardened on the spot. My mom opened her mouth, like she had more to say, but I cut her off before she could get a word in. I said it louder this time, no hesitation, no room for confusion. I don't owe any of you anything. You all made your choices. You picked favorites. You stayed quiet when it mattered most. And now? Now you live with it. Luca included. If the company falls apart, that's not a tragedy. That's a consequence. And I'm not your safety net. Then I shut the door. Solid. Final. After they left, I walked back to my now cold coffee and took a slow sip. But my mind was already spinning. A single thought crawled into my head and stuck there like a splinter. How did they know I had 7 stores? I never told them. Not once. Even back when we still had those strained holiday visits, I never mentioned numbers. I kept everything quiet. They weren't on Instagram. They didn't follow me on LinkedIn. And then it hit me. YouTube. The one place I still posted updates. Clips where I talked about pet health, nutrition, training tips, my love for animals. My work. My life. Maybe someone they knew had sent them a video. Or maybe they'd searched on their own. Either way, a chill ran down my back, not because they knew, but because I knew what they were capable of once they saw something they could use. I didn't waste a second. I grabbed my phone and fired off a message, sharp and direct. If you, Mom, or Luca do anything that harms my business or my name, I will take legal action. No warnings. I'm serious. I had sinned. And for a moment, I really hoped that would be enough. But I should have known better. The very next day, Luca went public. He posted on Facebook, then Reddit, then Instagram. I didn't read it at first, but people I knew started sending it to me. Employees, friends, even a few old clients. And just like that, the media came knocking. I didn't need to read every line to know what he wrote. I could already feel it. He made it sound like I abandoned them when they were drowning. Claimed I slammed the door in my parents' faces. Said I tossed them out like strangers when they came to me for help. He even tried to paint a bigger picture, that I had a history of mistreating my own blood. The lies were so twisted I barely recognized what parts had once been true. But facts don't matter when a story hits the internet. People want drama, emotion, a villain they can hate, a rich, cold-hearted son, a struggling, innocent family, a tragedy they can share, gossip about, and use to make themselves feel better. And it worked. By noon that same day, the fallout started. Grooming appointments got canceled. Clients ghosted us. Our social media pages filled up with hate. Some folks even messaged me directly, cursing me out. I knew right then, if I didn't step up fast, I could lose everything I'd built. So that afternoon, I walked straight into Derek's office. No appointment. No call ahead. Just one message. I need to see you. It's urgent. Derek, my lawyer, and an old friend squeezed me in between meetings. His office hadn't changed a bit. Still bright, clean, quiet. He sat across from me, hands folded, listening closely as I laid out every detail. I gave him screenshots, printed out the comments, even handed over the financial reports showing the hit my business had taken. When I finished, he leaned back, arms still crossed, and gave me a half-smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. You just hit the jackpot, Ethan, he said. I blinked. What's that supposed to mean? He chuckled softly, then tilted his head toward me. I mean, legally speaking, you've got this in the bag. What Luca did, posting that, smearing your name, damaging your brand, it's textbook defamation. Add the business impact on top? You're looking at a strong case. And a very solid payout. A weight I didn't even realize I was carrying started to lift off my chest. Derek went on, calm and collected. If the court plays this fair, Luca's not just going to be called out, he's going to be held accountable. And the damages could be higher than what you've lost. I didn't say much, just nodded. Then I reached into my bag, pulled out the documents I'd brought with me, and slid them across his desk. Draw up the case, I said. You have full authority to handle this. Derek reached out his hand. Not to celebrate. Just a firm handshake to seal the start of something serious. That same afternoon, I signed the power of attorney. No texts. No more warnings. No waiting for someone to change. This time, I wasn't acting out of emotion. I was suing. And for once in my life, I didn't feel guilty about it. A couple weeks later, Derek got a call from Luca's lawyer. They wanted to talk settlement. I wasn't shocked. People like them only come crawling when they're hanging off the edge. When the control's gone. When the public image they care so much about is slipping fast. Sure enough, Derek called me in. Thursday afternoon. He placed a thin file in front of me and said, like he was ordering lunch, your family's ready to make a deal. I didn't say anything. Just looked at him. Derek slid the file open and pushed the first page my way. They want to sell the company, he said. But there's a catch, they'd like to stay on as internal advisors. I stared down at the page, reading line by line. Technically, there was nothing wrong with the offer. On paper, it made sense. But the problem wasn't in the proposal, it was in the people behind it. I looked up at Derek. My voice was even, not angry, just, done. Tell them I'm not interested. He gave a small nod. Didn't push. Didn't ask why. I stood, grabbed my coat, and paused at the door. I'm not buying the company. I'm not hiring family. Especially not the ones who treated me like a bank account with a pulse. Then I added, just to close the book for good, I'm not rescuing a family that never once thought to rescue me. 3 months after Luca posted his garbage online, the court date finally arrived. The courthouse wasn't far from my apartment, but I left early that morning. I needed time, just a few minutes, to breathe, to center myself, to remind myself why I was doing this. Not out of vengeance. Out of principle. When I stepped into that courtroom, Luca was already there. He sat next to his lawyer, jaw tight, eyes darting around. That smug look he always wore at family dinners? Gone. That morning, he couldn't even hold his head up. And me? I didn't look at him once. I focused forward. Derek was ready. He laid everything out, missed contracts, closed stores, revenue loss, employee payouts. Every claim backed by receipts, reports, timestamps, proof. No fluff. No exaggerations. Luca's team tried to spin it. Said the post was emotional. Said they didn't think it'd blow up the way it did. Claimed people misunderstood. But nobody in that room bought it. 30,000 shares don't happen by accident. When the judge finally delivered the verdict, I kept my eyes down. I didn't need to see Luca. I just listened. The defendant, Luca Brooks, is found liable for significant commercial damages and is ordered to compensate the plaintiff, Ethan Brooks, for losses totaling $288,000. Silence settled over the courtroom like a curtain dropping. I stood up. I didn't look for Luca's face. I didn't scan the crowd for my parents. They weren't even there. I just walked out. Like I'd finally finished writing a chapter one never wanted to start in the first place. And this time, I wasn't walking away in shame. I'd stood my ground. Not to make a point, but because I stopped letting people walk over me. I heard later that Luca had to sell the company, the one they used to call their precious family legacy. He even sold his house just to come up with the money he owed me. I didn't ask questions. Didn't care how he pulled it off. What mattered to me was simple. I warned them. They didn't listen. They chose that path. And they finally had to live with the consequences. For 6 months, things were quiet. peaceful even. But then, 3 mornings ago, on a gray Saturday that looked too familiar, I heard the doorbell. 7 a.m., same exact time they showed up months ago asking for money. I opened the door, and there she was, my mom. Eyes red, face drawn, holding onto her purse like it was the only thing keeping her upright. She didn't speak right away. Then, in a voice that sounded like it had cracked and been taped back together, she said, "Your father, he's in the hospital. It's serious this time. Treatment's going to cost close to $30,000. She hesitated, then added, I know I was wrong. But please, just this once help me." I didn't feel anger, and I didn't feel pity. Just this dull, familiar emptiness creeping in, like déjà vu but colder. I stared at her for a while, and then, barely louder than a breath, I said the truth I'd been holding in for too long. "The day you both let Luca destroy everything I built and said nothing, that was the day my parents died. And I don't send money to the dead." She froze. No more begging. No more words. She stood there trembling, lips twitching like she wanted to speak, but couldn't. I didn't wait. I exhaled, then said it clear and sharp. "Ask your heir." And I closed the door. Slowly, quietly, but with finality. This time, it wasn't opening again. By now, maybe some of you think I'm cold, heartless, maybe even cruel. And maybe I am. But if that's what you're thinking, I'm just asking one thing. Don't be so quick to judge. Because here's the thing. That same afternoon, after she left, I went to the hospital. I didn't go inside his room. Didn't stand by the window like some dramatic movie scene. I went to the front desk, gave them his name, asked if he was really there. He was. And the treatment did cost close to 20 grand, just like she said. They showed me the paperwork. For a split second, I nearly reached for my wallet. But then my mind snapped back to that Easter dinner 1 year ago. The raised glasses, the public announcement, the silence that followed. The next morning, still numb, I made a few calls to friends in real estate. Turned out, my parents still owned their house. No liens, no transfers, no mortgage, and it was worth about $400,000. Plenty to cover the bills. So no, I didn't pay. Instead, I sent her one last message. "You still have the house. Sell it to pay for Dad's treatment." She never responded. Maybe she hesitated because she loved that place. Maybe she was saving it for Luca all along. Or maybe she just couldn't believe I wasn't stepping in like I always had. Whatever the reason, I don't care anymore. Sell it. Don't sell it. That's her choice. But I've made mine. And I'm not going back. After everything I've been through, I don't expect anything from my family anymore. But that doesn't mean I've stopped believing in what family could be. What I've learned, the hard way, is that family isn't always the people you're born to. Sometimes, it's the people you find. The ones you choose. The ones who choose you back. I used to think if I worked hard enough, gave enough, bent over backward long enough, eventually they'd notice. Eventually, they'd appreciate it. But the truth? Some folks only start counting what you've done for them the moment you've got nothing left to give. And that's why I'm telling this story. Not to make anyone angry. Not to fish for pity. I'm telling it because I know someone out there needs to hear it. Someone who's been where I was. Expected to carry the weight. To make peace. To keep showing up. Just because they were this strong one. This successful one. This stable one. If that's you, let me say this. You are not a bad person for drawing a line. You're not selfish for saying, "Not this time." Sometimes, kindness needs boundaries to survive. And sometimes, love needs distance to stay real. Especially when it's been one-sided for way too long. So before I wrap this up, I've got a question for you. To those of you who've stuck with me till the very end, who've listened without skipping, who've let these words sit with you, I want to ask, was I wrong to walk away from a family that treated me like a backup plan? Was I too harsh for not helping someone who once stood silent when I needed them the most? What would you have done if it were your story? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I mean it. I genuinely want to hear what you think. And if this story hit something deep inside you, if it made you think, if it felt familiar, go ahead and like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear it too. Thanks for being here. I'll catch you in the next story.